Back again in the Slay the God series. This time we will continue the Donghua Slay the God Part 7 storyline series, Episode 9. For those of you who haven't had time to watch the previous part, please watch it first, guys, so you can understand the storyline. Okay, guys, without lingering, we will go straight to the storyline. Lin Qiye unexpectedly managed to cut off the mask of the captain of the mask squad that night, after the two had clashed their divine powers against each other. And to cap off the action that night, the two divine agents worked together to seal Cao Yuan's power craze. While the captain of the mask squad used the power of slowing down time on the target, Lin Qiye negated Cao Yuan's forbidden ruin by using the forbidden item of the ribbon scroll previously given by Bai Li Tuming. When Cao Yuan's movement was stopped, the dark power that enveloped his body began to dissipate, making Cao Yuan slowly regain consciousness. Shaking Lin Qiye's hand, Cao Yuan said that Lin Qiye was the person who could help him wash away the sins of murder that Cao Yuan had committed and admit that he was a sinner. After using uncontrollable force, Cao Yuan collapsed, just as Geng Yuan's chief instructor arrived. He requested that Lin Qiye's victory not be shared in order to keep the rebellious new disciples obedient during their training. In this matter, the remaining disciples felt that the decision should be decided by Lin Qiye, as he was the one who had managed to create the victory. Lin Qiye quite firmly said that they had already won. He also thought that in this case there was no need for lies to be covered up just to make the disciples obey the rules. And of course, for those who couldn't abide by the rules, those disciples didn't deserve to be Night Watcher members. The destruction caused by the battle at that time caused the dormitory building to be partially damaged. But in just a few hours, everything was restored back to normal by using the Mask Squad captain's time-reversing forbidden ruin. On that morning at the training ground, the chief instructor thanked the mask squad captain for his hard work. "Well, that's a trivial matter," replied the captain. Seeing the mask squad captain's pretentious behavior made Geng Yuan a bit annoyed. As for the abilities of the new disciples, for Geng Yuan, the disciples this time were a lot aggressive and had great potential. But still, Geng Yuan hoped that the captain could win beforehand. The mask squad captain could of course win easily, as long as his strength wasn't suppressed. But if that happened, not only would the dormitory building be destroyed, but the entire facilities in this training camp would also all be destroyed by him. Waking up early, brushing your teeth before starting a new day, that's what the new disciples do. Meeting each other in the same building also brings them closer and closer together. The training period at the Night Watcher camp began. From the results of the previous testing, a total of 112 disciples were disobedient and had to be eliminated from the camp. And of course, the elimination session to filter out suitable members will also be applied in future trainings. From here on, the management has also suppressed the disciples' forbidden ruin by using a forbidden item. Without having superpowers, they are just like ordinary people. And during this time, the management promised to make the disciples tormented by applying various methods that were so painful that they made them desperate and wanted to run away. Among the various physical exercises that the disciples must participate in, we will focus a bit on the sword training that will be led by a new instructor named Han Li. Unlike the other staff who witnessed the opening exam session earlier, Instructor Han knows absolutely nothing about the disciples' abilities, let alone their own. There was a bit of concern from the staff who were happy to watch him from the control room, but they were confident that Instructor Han would be able to handle the new disciples since he was a swordsmanship competition champion. Instructor Han was a bit surprised why the fat disciple in front of him was wearing so much jewelry on his body. In his opinion, in this place, how to make money wasn't important because they all had to utilize the superpowers they had and develop them to be able to fight against the evil gods and the Church of Ancient God, who had begun to make moves. At the same time, Mr. Han unleashed an attack on Tumming, but he was knocked back, and Mr. Han's wooden sword broke. Since Tumming had a protective, forbidden item around his neck, he apologized, kept the necklace, and asked for a rematch. Mr. Han was a little embarrassed, but he thought it was just a minor accident, and the training resumed. But again, when Mr. Han swung his second attack, the instructor's wooden sword caught fire from the effects of the firewall bracelet that the Tumming had also forgotten to remove. Immediately, the fatso became the butt of jokes from the other disciples who were watching because he had forgotten to remove his magic item in this exercise. Annoyed, Mr. Han immediately told him to come down. From here, he also began to feel that the disciples in this exercise were a bit problematic, which was why he then appointed Lin Qiye to come up. From the look of Lin Qiye, this Mr. Han felt that Lin Qiye was a kind and gentle white boy, so he would be a good example in the exercise he was about to teach. He asked Lin Qiye to get ready to withstand the instructor's attacks, promising that he would not hit him hard. But in fact, the white and gentle boy was not what he appeared to be. Lin Qiye was able to withstand all of Mr. Han's attacks, even though he had increased the intensity of his attacks, thus making the instructor a little overwhelmed. But Lin Qiye was able to withstand it easily. Mr. Han asks who Lin Qiye learned swordsmanship from, which is definitely team leader 136 Chen Mu-ye, who was seen cooking at the same time. Trying to calm down, Mr. Han again tried to find another weaker disciple to teach, and this time his gaze fell on Molly. Without further ado, Molly took the initiative to go up while introducing herself as part of the Mo family, which is famous for sword techniques. And immediately Mr. Han immediately told Molly to sit back down on the grounds that she was not told to go up. Mr. Han took a breath and convinced himself that at least in this exercise, he could give teachings to disciples who needed it. Among the strong-looking disciples, there was one short-haired disciple who looked very quiet, and that was Cao Yuan. Before being told to go upstairs, Mr. Han asked if Cao Yuan had brought a forbidden item like a Tumming, or if he had received swordsmanship instruction from a strong man like Lin Qiye. Cao Yuan shook his head and said that his skill was reciting Buddhist sutras. Well, this is suitable, Mr. Han thought. After Cao Yuan went up, Mr. Han threw a wooden sword at Cao Yuan. But Cao Yuan let the sword fall while explaining that he could not touch the sword, even if it was just a wooden sword. In the other direction, Tumming explained that Cao Yuan did not want to, not because he was disobedient, but because Cao Yuan's forbidden ruin would activate when holding the sword. Mr. Han said, "Don't worry because the forbidden ruin power of everyone in this area has been suppressed." Because of this, Cao Yuan eventually obeyed the instructor's orders, and this is what happened. Of course, it turned out that the suppressive power of the forbidden items for the disciples could not fully suppress the Black King Destroyer's terrifying power. Cao Yuan transformed back into his demonic form and attacked Mr. Han. Meanwhile, the other disciples ran in disarray when they saw the horror of the demonic figure that suddenly appeared. On the other hand, Lin Qiye was quite amazed by Mr. Han's ability to block Cao Yuan's attack using only his wooden sword. Eventually, Tu Ming, Shen Qingzhu, and Mo Li worked together to distract Cao Yuan and give Lin Qiye the chance to seal away Cao Yuan's demonic powers. With that, the problem was solved. But one thing Instructor Han realized was that the Rokis he had previously appointed were stronger disciples than the others. It was just bad luck for the new instructor. After the first day of training, The new disciples ate together in the cafeteria. There is a tradition that new disciples during the training period can only eat a plate full of raw meat and a tub of steamed bread without milk. The head chef said that if the disciples didn't like these foods, they could all just leave. Of course, the disciples couldn't eat the food for now. Well, at least they could still eat some of the pickles that were put in their meal. At that moment, to prove his sincerity to Lin Qiye, Cao Yuan came over and gave Lin Qiye the pickles he had. Lin Qiye wondered if Cao Yuan's kindness was because Lin Qiye had previously helped him seal Cao Yuan's power. Not only that, Cao Yuan said, because according to his master, there is only one person in this world who can help him wash away his past sins. And the sentence conveyed by his master refers to Lin Qiye. Here, Lin Qiye is curious about what sins Cao Yuan has actually committed. But Cao Yuan doesn't want to say it in public, so later when they are alone. Right at that moment from the entrance, the masked squad came to the cafeteria to eat and gave the disciples a chance to see the real faces hidden behind the masked squad. Their arrival also made the whole room filled with a tempting aroma, because the chef brought out delicious food for the mask squad, which immediately made disciples who smelled the aroma drool. Together with that, the mask captain also invited Lin Qiye to eat together. Lin Qiye, who was offered a meal at the mask squad table, refused. Even though he was sitting there, he would still eat the food given to new disciples. It was unfortunate because at that time, there were many disciples in the room who wanted Lin Qiye's position, but he refused the delicious food. The real reason Lin Qiye wanted to join the mask squad table was because Lin Qiye wanted to ask how the mask captain could become a god agent. Lin Qiye was very to the point, and then the mask captain explained. About 8 or 9 years ago, when he was returning home from school, a truckan, a drunk driver, suddenly appeared and was about to hit him on the road. But suddenly time stopped, along with the appearance of the god of time, who showed himself in front of him. The two enter into a contract that makes the mask captain an agent of the god. And in exchange for the power he gained, the mask captain was asked to retrieve something at a location called Takamagahara, a divine plane originating from Japanese mythology. Because Kronos said that it is certain that this place really exists in this world. It's just that until now, the mask captain still can't find it. The contract made by humans and gods should have been reciprocal between the two. But it was very strange, because in Lin Qiye's case, Archangel Michael just stared at him, and the two didn't make any agreements. Captain Mask reminded Lin Qiye that since Archangel Michael was in the top 003 position, Lin Qiye had to be careful because there were many forces that wanted him badly. For example, the Church of Ancient God organization. It was said that they were a group of crazy people. If they couldn't recruit Lin Qiye, then they would eliminate Lin Qiye's identity as a divine agent by devouring his power until finally killing him. The masked captain himself had been ambushed 4 times by members of the Church of Ancient God, but it was a good thing that he was still able to survive until now. Of course, the incident happened in the past, because now they no longer dared to come before the mask captain. The reason was because he now had teammates who were highly competent and he could rely on. That was why the Church of Ancient God stopped the intention to obtain Kronos' divine agent. And just like him, the masked king was confident that Lin Qiye would definitely find a reliable partner during his time in this training camp. That was why he should have many friends. But in the middle of the meal, the disciples suddenly fainted, while the masked captain wished Lin Qiye a good time. The cafeteria turned tense at the sound of the alarm, followed by the windows and doors closing tightly. And it turned out that the reason why the disciples fainted was because they had eaten the special pickles that the head chef had been preparing for 49 days. When he woke up, Lin Qiye found he was with other disciples, who were already in different places. Through the loudspeakers placed around, the chief instructor, Gung Yuan, told the disciples that today would be a special training day for them, and the training would begin in a countdown from 5. As many drones appeared and fired paintballs at the disciples, the training began immediately. The purpose of this extreme training is to require disciples to cross the Jiangnan mountain range to reach the line before dawn. The first rule is that 3 hours after the start of the training, the trainees are not allowed to attack or touch the drones in any way, so they can only run away when the drones are firing a hail of bullets. The main mountain roads are also all closed, so disciples are required to find their own routes to reach the finish line. The course will also be made more difficult by the fact that they are all now wearing vests that weigh 35 kilograms. Disciples who are hit by drone fire 5 times will be expelled from the course, while those who make it to the finish line first will receive a useful prize.
3全程不可脱去，你们身上配备的。
Disciples who are excluded from this special training will be punished. For example, a disciple named Wang Liang. Because he was hit by 5 paintball bullets, he was declared a failure. Now he is placed in a room while being asked to tell about the most embarrassing incident in his life, and the story will be broadcast to all disciples. Wang Liang can't lie because the instructors have put a spell ring on him that makes him unable to tell lies. This disciple said that when he was 7 years old, he put a lamp in his mouth, and he couldn't get it out of his mouth because it was stuck, which was weird. And when he met a girl he liked, he was laughed at loudly because he still had the lamp stuck. Instead of being laughed at, he opened his mouth wide to scare the girl he liked into crying. Getting the stuck bulb out took effort for Wang Liang, and at night he was beaten by his father because the lamp was supposed to be used by his father for lighting. That's the strange story of this disciple, and that's the punishment for disciples who fail. It's terrible, isn't it? At the end of the story, we will see one of the members of the Church of Ancient God, Lu Liang, who was smuggling into the Jiangnan mountain area, suddenly got a bullet attack that almost hit him, and it turned out that it came from a traitor training camp staff who intended to pick him up. So that's the explanation of Slay the Gods, Episode 9. Okay, thank you very much for watching until the end, and don't forget to support you with likes, subscribes, and comments. And the final word from me, bye.